year, I thought I would try to get to know people, and I joined a couple of meetup groups because I love board games. And so I went to a number of meetup groups, and it was a lot of fun. And I remember about my third time I was joining this one group. I don't normally tell people what I do because sometimes I get sort of interesting reactions. But after about the third meeting, somebody turned to me and said, "So what do you do?" I said, "I'm a minister." I start to look, and he just blurts out, "So what do you do all day?" And I was like, "A lot." It was sort of a funny thing, but I love that his sort of immediate reaction was to blurt out this question, trying to understand something that he obviously didn't. And that's not a bad response, to be curious, to wonder, right? And we often hold back on questions because we don't want to bother people, or we don't want to seem stupid or ignorant or whatever it is. And sometimes we don't even know that we have the questions until we're asked to come up with one. But my teachers always used to tell me, and I believe this deeply, that there's no such thing as a bad question. And if you have a question, chances are someone else has the same question too. Y'all hear that before from teachers? Yeah. So today I'd like to invite you to ask a question, and it can be about anything. You've got in your order of service that you were given, there's a piece of paper there. Looks like this. And I do ask that people put their name on it. I won't announce who's asking the question, but it's helpful for me sometimes to know the context. And I might know somewhere that context is coming from. It also helps people to ask things nicely, right, if their names are coming. And I'm okay with difficult questions. You can ask difficult questions, that's fine. And you know, there's like some ideas up there that you might do, and you could circle which one. Catherine's gonna then put them in this sort of, group them together and see if there's multiple questions that might be similar, that kind of thing. So I just invite you to just take a moment to think about any question that you might have. I don't know if anything that we did up here might spark something, or theological, or like, I've always wanted to know this about Unitarian Universalists, or what's the theology of pomegranates? You know, I don't know. Whatever you have out there, how do you feel about this? Anything. And if you need a piece of paper or a pencil, raise your hand and the ushers have them. So we need one over here, I think a pencil. And some pencils there, and there. And there. So Diane, Dave, Linda, Jordan. Keep your hands raised if you still need it. So luckily, I was actually, one person actually sent me questions ahead of time to ask. And so while you're all thinking about these, I'm going to start answering a question, and then we're going to sing a song. So one of the questions that he says, I seriously ask the following. If people don't believe in a superpower, whom do they thank for their advantages or blessings? So instead of saying thank God or God bless you, what do they say? I thought that was a really interesting question. I've had a little bit of time to think about it. And my answer to that is, I don't know, ask them. That sounds kind of like a little bit of a cop-out, but how many atheists do we have here if you want to out yourself as an atheist? So I invite this person to look around and to ask any of those people with their hands raised. You know, because that's basically, I can't necessarily answer for someone. I'm a theist. So I don't know that I can answer for that. I would say, though, that there is an assumption in this question that means to say, oh, thank God, means you're actually thanking God. We say things all the time like, oh, God, you know, and we don't mean we're not actually invoking something. We might say, oh, thank God for that. There are expressions that we have that simply express gratitude, right? And gratitude we can all feel. Gratitude doesn't necessarily have to be targeted towards someone or something. It could be simply a feeling that we have of appreciation that's out there. When we say in prayers here on Sunday, I know that there are many people doing some fancy interpretation going on in their head for their own way of expressing who or what we're thanking or calling out to. And that's okay. That's part of what we do as we have different theological paths. We all have to interpret and make those leaps for us. So I think that people who say God bless you, if you sneeze, they may or may not be really actually invoking God. They're simply doing an expression of acknowledgement, for example. So that's my understanding of that question. So there's another question that this person asked, but I also I think I've seen some people end their questions. So let's sing a song really quick, and we're going to actually sing the song probably multiple times in between some questions. Let's collect those. The ushers are going to pass the basket around. You can put your questions in the basket as we sing. I'd appreciate learning your definitions of words like religion, worship, sacred, divine, and spirit. Now there's an entire sermon right there. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to answer at least some of these. So religion, that's what, one we often say, I'm spiritual but not religious, right? And usually actually I think what we're actually saying is I feel a connection to something, but I don't want the dogma and the rules that exclude people, right? But a religion really it's a way of institutionalizing a community into a certain set of rituals and ways of being together. So we are a religion. The word religion actually comes from the Latin religare, if I remember, which means to bind together again. And so when I think of religion, it's what binds us together. And in this congregation, we have a covenant. And we say it every week when we light our chalice. Love is the spirit of this church. That's our covenant. A covenant is a promise. That's what binds us together. It's simply a promise that we make. And that actually comes out of the Jewish tradition. The Jewish tradition has a covenant. They have what we call a vertical covenant, right? So they have a covenant between the Jewish people and God. And it says, okay, God says, I'll take care of you if you worship me. And that's in the Hebrew scriptures. And constantly that covenant is broken, right? I mean, that's the flood and all that sort of stuff. The covenant is broken, and yet they constantly come back together in covenant. They say, oops, sorry. Didn't mean to wipe you out. Okay, let's get back together. So we Unitarian Universalists, we have a covenant together, but it's not vertical, it's horizontal. It's with one another, right? And so we say everyone is welcome here, but not all behaviors are. In other words, when we act up, when we act out of covenant, out of love, out of service, that's when we break the covenant. But we can come back together in covenant through forgiveness and apology, all those sorts of things. We have lots of covenants. We say the one every day here. We have a covenant of right relations, which is a much more specific document that says if one person's mad at this person, they can get together and how we go through that process. The board has a covenant when we meet about how we're going to be together. We hold the highest regard for the church in our minds, that we come prepared, that kind of thing. So covenants are just promises that we make. We don't ask for someone to give us their firstborn if they break the promise. We just ask people, as people of integrity, to make those promises. So that to me is what religion is about, is what is it that binds us? For us, it's that promise. Worship is another word that a lot of people don't really like because, people think bow down, right? And actually in the Hebrew, it does literally mean, the word that's translated into worship does mean bow down. But worship, which is an old English word, actually means to lift up what is worthy. So I like that. I mean, that's the definition I use, that every here Sunday, we lift up what is worthy to be lifted up. So let's see here. Sacred Divine Spirit. Oh my goodness, that's a lot. How are we doing on questions? I just want to make sure we get other people. You ready?
Yeah, okay. So it should come as no surprise that there are lots of questions about Sian herself, about your theology. So
okay.
What hymn or song do you feel best captures your spirituality or the heart of this church?
One of my absolute favorite hymns is When Our Heart Is in a Holy Place. Mm-hmm. I love that. We are blessed with love and amazing grace when our heart is in a holy place. I think that would be one of my favorites. And I love it. The other reason why I love it, in my home congregation in Seattle, when I was in seminary, it was a tiny, tiny church, like 50 people, maybe 40 on Sunday, right? And the choir was like half the people in the church, and everybody was invited to be in the choir, including this guy who sang off key. And when we would sing that song, he would sing the most. There's a chorus that everybody would sing, and then there are these verses that individuals would sing in the choir, and he would belt out completely off key, when our heart is in a holy place. And I love that. I love that he sang with abandon and joy, and it didn't matter, and nobody cared that he sang off key. So it holds a special place in my heart. Let's see.
Asked by one and wondered by many.
There we go. I am often asked, what is Unitarian Universalism? As you give me can you give me a somewhat succinct answer I can use when people ask me this question? No, I'm just kidding. I'm being slightly silly. It totally depends on who I'm talking to. If I'm talking to someone who comes here on Sunday morning, and I don't know what their theology are, but chances are they checked us out and they ask me that question, or I want something that I might say, so we're an inclusive faith tradition. I try to avoid the word religion. I said faith tradition that embraces people of all beliefs. So you're going to sit next to an atheist, you're going to sit next to an agnostic, a pagan. So I kind of name all those things so they can feel that they are welcome here. So that's how I'll approach it that way. If I'm in an interfaith place, I might more approach it, particularly with other Christians, as, well, Unitarians and Universalists came together in 1961, and Unitarians believed in the unity of God instead of the Trinity of God. So they know that language, right? The Trinity of God. So they believe in the unity of God. So Jesus, really, really great guy, but not co-equal with God. And the Universalists believed that God's love was so gracious, so huge, it saved everyone. And most people in interfaith go, yeah, I believe that too. And I'm like, yeah. Because all of that is true, right? And so it does depend actually on who I am talking to. So, but if you're talking to your family, for example, how do you explain Unitarian Universalism? I say, it's a place where I find a home because it welcomes absolutely everyone. That's how, I might just say it simply like that. And then if they have more questions, then I'll ask more, like, what does that mean?
Okay, so those two kind of go together.
Okay, let's see here. Okay, so one question, is it true that the Unitarians are giving food and drink to people who are coming over the border from Mexico? Yeah. As a matter of fact, a lot of people are going out to the desert and they're leaving water because so many people are dying trying to cross the desert there, so they leave jugs of water around. And yes, they are trying to find ways to help people so people don't die trying to cross the border, because they're coming here for the opportunities that are here. So yeah, it is true. Another question is it helpful to give money to people that tell you they want it for drugs or alcohol? Boy, that's a tough one. And you know, my personal feeling is generosity is letting go, and it's letting a person make their own choices. So if you feel called to be generous, be generous. Let them decide how they're going to do that. I don't know of any person who's ever come to me and say, I need money for drugs and alcohol personally. Usually they say, I just need money. And I know that they may very well be using it for drugs or alcohol. And I can't make that decision for them. That has to be them. But I can model generosity of spirit. And so that's what I do. I have to admit, one of the things I do is I prefer to actually have, we sell script out here, right? I give cards away. Here at the church, we don't give money. We give Target cards. And I know you can get alcohol at Target, but I also know that it helps people get medicine, and it helps people buy shoes and underwear and everything like that. So one thing you can do is you can buy those script cards at fast food places, and you can give it to people and say, here's $15 for a fast food place. That's a really, I think, helpful way, and then you feel good. You don't have to be asking and wondering what's going on, but it's helpful for everybody involved. So hopefully that.
Want to sing for a second?
Sure, let's sing. Oh my goodness, we're already.
Yeah.
Welcome to this circle where love and grace abound. Honor your journey wherever you are bound. We will walk beside you, encourage you on your way. Celebrate your spirit and hold you as we pray. There is love, one like you. There is grace enough to see you through. Wherever you have walked, whatever path you choose, may you know there is love for one like you.
So wow, these are heavy questions. They're all kind of a similar way, which makes me think I'm going to do a sermon on this at some point, which is basically, how do we reconcile the hate and evil in the world, like the shooting that happened in San Diego yesterday, with dignity and worth of all persons? How do we reconcile all of the sadness that comes from those, our approach to religious freedom when somebody's being immoral or harmful? Boy, that's a big question. And there's no really easy answer for that, except for, to me, it has to do with spiritual integrity for me. In that I believe in our first principle, which is the inherent dignity and worth of all people. All people. But as I say, everybody may have dignity and worth, but that doesn't mean that their behaviors are appropriate. And I preach a lot on love and peace and, let's all get along with one another, basically. I mean, that's what most ministers preach on. And I also believe in speaking up and speaking out and trying to create a different world where we are all welcome. There is evil in this world, and I believe that deeply. We, human beings, we have the capacity for evil deeply in us. It's actually, to me, when we cut ourselves off from people, when we cut ourselves off from any type of connection, whether you want to think of it as a spiritual connection or connection to one another, when we cut ourselves off from love, that is the beginning of evil. That's when hatred and othering of people happens, right? Those people over there, I don't like them because of what they do and what they represent. So for me, it is about always trying to understand, to ask the questions. Who is that person? Who are they? Getting to know them. So we reach out to people that are different from us, that think and believe differently. It's the only way we are going to heal all of this evil that's in the world. And it's a really fine line to walk, right? I want to give a person dignity and worth, so that shooter in San Diego, they do have dignity and worth, and what they did is reprehensible and horrible. Those two are not an either or. They're a both and, right? Yeah, evil, that's not an easy topic. And it's not one easy to reconcile with who we are. And yet I believe it's what we're called to do, is to see that and to model it in the world. And that's all we can do. I think that part of it is that we get frustrated because we want to do something, we want to stop all of it. And I'd love to be able to do that. But how do you do that? How we can do that, the only thing I can think of is that we model it. You know, when Jesus said, you know, we are the light of the world, he's basically saying, model who we are. Model this acceptance, this inclusion, this love. And people will know me through you. People will know love through you. That's the only way that I know how. And of course, there's, you know, working for legislation, you know, voting for the right people, okay? There's all of these other works that we do as well that adds to that. But that's how we model. That's how we choose. Make sure I've sort of, let's see here. Why in UU services the word evil use? Oh, there, I already did define that, so there we go, okay. Why is there a divide between the haves and the have-nots? Free will. Where is God with the mother walking thousands of miles with her small child? It's in your heart. God is with her, helping her through. This is my theology. And God is in your heart, lifting that up to ask you, what can you do? So my theology says that God is constantly inviting us into relationship. It's never a punishment. It's never a, you have to. It's a, please, remember your neighbor. Please, remember those who are hurting. Please reach out. It's an invitation. So the fact that that's what we lift up a lot here is trying to allow people to realize, where is the invitation? Where are we invited to be in relationship with those that are different from us? Can't believe I've already talked for like 25 minutes. Oh my goodness. I think that's our service today. These are really great questions, and I think I'm going to have to do this more often because, and there's so, I think I need to address this in a deeper way, and I will. So thank you all for these questions. I'm grateful for questions. You know, there's an old, rather bad joke about Unitarian Universalists that if you want to make us angry, just burn a question mark on our lawn. And it's kind of, I mean, yeah, I know, there's lots of reasons why it's a bad joke, but we love questions. And that's what I want to encourage, and what we're going to be talking about in May is about curiosity and wonder, and opening our eyes and our minds to questions. And these are great questions to ask about who we are as a people, what are we called to do, and all of us can answer that for ourselves, right? You have your own relationship with the holy, with community, with justice, and you do have to answer that for yourself. I'm here to help invite you into that relationship with your best self. So let us sing our final song.
Arise as you are able or willing, embodied in the Holy Spirit. And we're going to sing this.